Okay.
Something just crawled across my computer screen.
What's that?
Something just went crawling across my computer screen.
Oh no.
Around the back of my computer. And I'm just like, I don't know what that was. I'm afraid.
Your computer has bugs.
I don't think I want to go. I'm just going to stay right here and let it. Yep, we're good. Game! That was timing.
So, the session last week ended on a fairly dramatic note. The last shot that we saw was Caulan and Cordelia having been intimate and finishing off a joint, unaware that at that very moment, Colin's mom's car had driven straight off of a bridge, and
Plunging into what?
Plunging into the thin ice of the lake. So for today's session, and I'm kind of picturing this as separate TV episodes. So today's episode, the scene that I'm imagining that we open on is just a little bit of a jump after that, where Cordelia and Caulan, how long are you guys just kind of like laying there? Like, is this how much time do you spend in afterglow territory?
Well, we're smoking a joint.
Uh-huh.
So until I get the text saying the whatever, I assume I would not get up.
Okay. So you two are settled in for a while, enjoying the pot as much as anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, assuming that's what Cordelia is doing. If she gets up, that could get someone back into the party, but likely that's all that's going on.
Yeah, we know that the werewolf who has established a deep spiritual connection with you is all about the laying there and soaking it in. What's Cordelia about in the afterglow?
Soaking it in. He said it. I didn't say it.
So I would say that Cordelia is less soaking it in and more just like,
Tell when you need
like,
one.
I can tell that he's like, formed this like deep connection. I do feel kind of shitty for like toying with him a little bit, and like, so she's just gonna like enjoy the pot and just kind of, she hasn't formed a deep spiritual connection, but
Right.
she's also not gonna like, kick him out either. She's just gonna just let it happen.
That kind of awkward dance where you're trying to make sure you don't say or do anything that would inspire overcommitment.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
Still trying to enjoy it on your own terms.
Yeah, like maybe if he tries to kiss her, she might kind of give him her cheek a little bit, or just kind of.
Wow.
Sure. And in the background, Logan Amati has been resuming playing
Playing
music.
saxophone shirtless. Sorry.
What was that?
Playing the saxophone shirtless.
Oh God. I never specified. But he could be.
I don't know.
He's about to lose a string on.
I'm kind of picturing more of the kind of cliche acoustic guitar sort of setup.
Does he have seashells on the necklace that he wears?
Poop shells.
Andy.
Shell necklace.
Andy, this is your mentor that they are talking about. So, does he have seashells on a necklace? I will let Andy decide this one.
He has a seashell on a leather cord.
Single. Nice.
He doesn't quite play into the thing, but he skirts it pretty close.
Maybe a couple of beads around it to kind of frame it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
There is some message written on the inside of the seashell that you can never see because it's, facing his chest while he's wearing it. Some hidden meaning or hidden secret. Okay, so now I'm totally like his button-up shirt, which is fairly high quality. Like I said, Mr. Amati is one of the movers and shakers in town. So his son is wearing very classy button-up shirt that is not quite conspicuously wealthy, but is, comfortably wealthy. And it's unbuttoned just enough that, this little seashell necklace can be seen. And so the camera is going to, for the opening of tonight's session, is going to jump from you guys. And, as much as there's this dance between, as Caulan goes in to get, for a kiss, and Cordelia kind of gives him the cheek, it's also still a very cold night. So there's probably still, cuddling going on. If for nothing else, just warmth. So the camera jumps from you guys.
Can the moment when he turns the cheek be the moment that the phone texts gets there, so that he doesn't even register that that's the thing?
Sure. And that's I was gonna say the very next thing was quite naturally, as you expect. There is your phone have a ringer for your father, or is it on buzz? What's?
I assume he's got a ringtone or something.
Okay. So yeah. You recognize that ringtone. Start playing.
Just Dennis Leary singing "I'm an Asshole." It's a great song.
Dad, I'm kind of in the middle of something. What's up?
And there's this tone of voice that people acquire during moments of terrible impact that is very difficult to describe. There is a kind of monotone quality of somebody that is just barely keeping it together, that is, as much as it's monotone, it still it evokes a primordial reaction. And your father on the other end says that there's been an accident, you need to come home.
All right. Is everything okay?
Just, you need to come home. We'll talk about it when you get here.
Oh, God damn it. You guys fighting again?
Oh, this is good.
And there's a pause, and then in like for all of that monotone trauma voice that I had just described, it breaks, and he says, "Get the fuck home now."
Jesus Christ. Look, I've got to go. I'm so sorry. This has just been the best. My parents are being crazy, but this has really meant a lot. I don't know. Anyways, but I've got to go. I've got to go, and I will see you later. Can you get home? Do you need a ride home? Do you need to take you home?
No, I'm good.
You okay?
Yeah, no, you go. Hope everything turns out okay for you.
Yeah, I hope I get there all right. Whew, that's some good week. All right, and
And as soon as, sorry, I just want to say, as soon as you looked at your phone, Cordelia immediately was like, "Oh, thank God," and started getting dressed. So she's like concerned, but also super relieved that she can like now come out of this moment.
right.
I mean, if the right person hits on her later tonight, she's totally going to be breaking that spiritual connection.
Right.
That's what it sounds like.
Oh, fair.
Look, he's like 16. Maybe he didn't know what he was doing. Who knows?
Okay. So Cordelia is dressing, and Caulan has apologized and has said just how much this night has meant to him, and if he hasn't given Cordelia the locket by then, that might very well be the moment that he gives her the locket.
Sure. That makes sense.
And we don't see her on screen, but just a reminder to the audience that Abby has not said that she knows how to get home, and is in fact still on top of Devil's Rock.
Doesn't give a shit. Doesn't even remember that she exists. He was here for one reason and one reason only.
Oh, poor Abby.
But yeah, so but the camera doesn't pan to her. There's no dramatic importance there.
Sure.
At least no dramatic importance that wouldn't be handled by subtext later.
Sure. Yeah, she's gonna be a little bit salty Monday morning in class, I feel like.
Maybe. Or maybe you'll end up hanging out with her later tonight.
No, fuck no.
Oh.
I've done my good deed.
Getting a ride home with those freshmen.
You've done your good, dude.
So yeah, I imagine that Caulan is pretty high, but so you get into the car and you do your best to
Yeah.
okay. All right. So then I think
While Colin's driving.
What?
Meanwhile, while Colin's driving.
Yeah, and I just kind of want to handle this fairly quickly, but the three of you are still at the party, so just give us a general gist. When we last left off, Andy had just finished talking with Logan, and they had done a little bit of a political dance. We last saw Cordelia, her overly committed puppy was leaving, and when we last saw Frankie was in the woods, and like having a rather awkward engagement with a senior Yell leader, and neither of you can quite figure out if this is a sexy time or an awkward time or what's going on there.
Yeah.
In my notes, I
definitely feels a little awkward.
yeah. That I think is close enough to the Hollow's sex move, because the senior yell leader also is kind of getting awkward vibes from this. So go ahead and mark experience.
Woohoo! Cool.
But yeah, so and it's entirely possible that we just fade to black and move on to the next scene. But if Cordelia, Frankie, and or Andy have anything else that you want to like have implied as the scene shifts, where are you guys and what are you doing?
Andy is going to go back and find the freshman and Frankie, if Frankie is back, like in the main like middle of things, and do basically the subconscious version of like the good Fae host, like snagged some of the good beer from the band members and the like some snacks and like shows the freshman how to roll a joint.
Sure. And when we last saw, Marsha was with the freshmen, so Marsha is there with you too.
Yes.
So, okay. Frankie, what do you basically spend the rest of the scene in the creepy woods with this as yet unnamed yell leader, or do you say enough's enough and come back to the party?
His name is Marty.
Marty?
And I don't find the woods particularly creepy, but I will go back and look for Andy because I don't know quite what else to do.
Okay.
These sorts of things are still unexplored. There aren't a lot of movies and television series that cover what happens at that point because they always fade to black and leave you going, but what happens there? Most people can fill it in, but she's not actually a people, so.
Sure. And we'll, you said his name is Marty?
His name is Marty.
Marty. The
Marty,
last thing we'll see of Marty in that context is he will wait longer. Like you will go back to the party before he does, and he just kind of sits down on a stump and is texting a friend, going, "Yeah, I'm not sure what that was." Kind of like doing this weird debriefing, sitting in like, and again, in this part, even like on the outskirts of the woods, in the areas where you guys are, you're not deep into hard block at all, but it almost looks like there is a non-stop fog machine going, and somebody has gone through and sprayed all the trees to give them a damp look. Okay. So that's your go. You're gonna go meet back up with Andy. Cordelia, what's Cordelia's post Caulan plan for the evening?
So the last thing that you're gonna see of Cordelia is gonna be Caulan's car takes off, and she's just gonna be standing there, a little bit disheveled. Her boots are kind of unlaced. She's got her leather jacket kind of like over her shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And you said it's kind of cold out.
Yeah.
You're just gonna take a deep breath of the cold air. I feel like the puppy was putting off a lot of heat, so she is kind of like having this moment of like this like relief and just kind of like whatever. And then she's just gonna walk back over to the older kids that she was hanging out with before, and then that's gonna be the last that you see of her.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, let's go ahead.
And sorry, I also want to see her with the locket in her hand, and she's just gonna kind of like shove it into her jeans pocket.
Rather unceremoniously.
Yeah, just kind of stick it in there.
Okay. And the one last thing I want to get from you guys on that particular scene is Frankie. Andy's not going to be hard to find. You'll be able to go back, and basically it's where you last saw Andy. So how does that exchange go?
Frankie just kind of walks up and goes, "Hey." There's this weird thing where the eyes kind of look around like I don't know where to look.
And you two know known each other for a while, so.
Yeah.
Like Andy is used to the awkward, just kind of rolls with it, offers a joint and a beer. Sit with us.
Take a hit, pass it back. Here, kind of like.
You don't have to drink it if you want. You can pass it to Marcia.
And on that note, as Frankie returns, and you guys have that exchange, Marcia then starts like a story that like when one of the freshmen told Marcia when Andy came back, Marcia was like, "Oh, I got to tell you this thing," and told this like repeated this story. And then when Frankie comes back after Frankie and Andy kind of exchange looks, Marcia then, "Oh, I got to tell you this thing," and it's now the third time that the story has been told tonight at that circle. But Marcia is just really excited about it, and she would be prone to forget these things anyway, much less, while intoxicated. So, okay. And let's see, is Thundy still there?
He just stepped out to grab food. He's back.
Okay. Until he gets back, I'll throw in one more question there. Cordelia, with the rest of the evening and you hanging out with the seniors and a college freshman or two, I will give you the option. Do you roll turn someone on tonight? Or do we just kind of like fade to black and no mechanics involved?
Yeah, I would just fade to black.
Okay.
Actually, can I roll turn someone on?
Sure.
Like, I think Andy's gonna get a little bit like they've heard this story, going on 3 times now. Whatever Marcia's about to say, like, no, come on, let's go dance.
Okay, so you lean in and interrupt Marcia's story and ask Marcia if she wants to dance.
Yeah. And like Andy's pretty tipsy at this point. He doesn't mean anything by it, but
sure. Okay. So let's see. I actually do not have your character sheet directly in front of me. You have a +1 hot, so that gives you a 7, which means that, let's see. They either give you a string on them or they choose one. I'm going to go ahead and say that you get a string on Marcia.
all right.
She is going to, her story is thoroughly interrupted, and she um, will, like, her eyes will widen at the suggestion, and she will be easily led away to around the main bonfire, um, leaving the somewhat befuddled Frankie with the freshman.
Andy will make the rounds.
Okay. So a night of dancing and general jubilation thus follows.
Yes.
You know, you don't necessarily notice, but the camera would note that throughout the brief glimpses that we see, that Logan is paying a little bit more attention to Andy than he might have otherwise. Okay. So the natural progression would, of course, and this can be as in depth or as short as we want it to be. But at this point, Colin, your mom was not a mover and shaker per se, but you guys weren't. You're not necessarily poor, right? Like she operated on that level, or she operated with some of those people. And your father still has his job, so describe for me, like, you guys have a cozy 2-story house with a fence and a decent yard. What's the Coulson residence look like?
Well, you know how on TV they always make things like way more fancy than they should, like way more expensive than the housing that it should be?
Yes.
Okay. So these 3 people probably have like a 4 or 5 bedroom house because it's on TV, rather than like what they would actually have in real life. But think upper middle class neighborhood, clean neighborhood, clean house, and decorated TV artfully. You know what I mean? And but 2 stories with a 2-car garage, decent yard. But for some reason, the cul-de-sac that they're on has like woods background because it's fucking television. And there's so that's what I'm picturing for it. Before we have the time lapse. That's what I'm.
Sure. And actually, there's an idea percolating in the back of my head, but we'll see how this plays out. So as you drive up, and you were smoking a lot of weed, or at least a fair amount of weed.
A little bit of a joint.
So as you piled into the car and drove home, you pull up into the cul-de-sac and start turning to go to your house, and you see 3 cop cars. Yeah. The lights are flashing, and there are several neighbors that have come outside to gawk. We're late enough into the night. I mentioned it's been unseasonably warm, but the humidity off of the lake has mixed with it's probably like 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, something like that at this point. And there, as you pull up, there is just this kind of chill in the air. It's that time in the evening where the dew on the grass is just starting to condense. And you see your front door, despite the cold, the front door is just wide open, and there are 2 police officers in those like they got kind of like fur-lined, like winter police officer uniforms, standing on the porch and talking to each other. And one leans over or looks over and says something over the radio, and then goes back to having a conversation with their partner. The Gawkers see you as the car starts pulling up, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine that as you're taking this in, that you probably slow down a little bit before. So yeah, tell me how Caulan responds to like there being police out front, because again, you probably smell like weed.
Right, but I think I think he will reach into the center console and grab his little bottle of Axe body spray
Oh my God.
and spray himself.
Yeah, that shit'll cover everything.
Oh, it won't, but it'll.
You'll just
you'll
feel like
think-
You'll feel like it does.
right, and he'll look really like concerned about what's going on, and there's a lot of room for comedy here, but I don't think I would shoot it in that direction.
Sure.
So in this case, well, I could really lean into the comedy of this with the, hello, officer, type stuff. I think at the moment he's sensing that there's something serious going on, and he sprays quickly, and then the main thing is you see the look of concern on his face, and he, parks not in the driveway, and because their cars are in the driveway, and walks up, and I imagine you don't even see like what they say to him, or I imagine you just see them talking to him and him to play.
Sure. It's one of those moments where the we've already used this technique in the first episode, where the camera is strategically muted, and all you see is the body language of the people involved.
Right.
And so we see a shot of Caulan walking up, and the police officers on the porch, kind of motioning him into the house. And in keeping with the rather somber approach, it's one of those things where even if they, like, the younger of the two officers that are on the porch probably can like identify that particular combination of body spray and weed, but this, as you've said, this is one of the situations where the things that are actual crimes or actual tragedies, and the things that the police officers are told to police, there's a clear distinction between the two. So
Yeah.
even if you don't ever know whether or not they recognize, because just pass in. So I will. There are two ways that I can see this going, and this is a very much a character defining moment for Caulan. So again, I'm going to put this decision on your plate. Your father is home, and he's talking with a police officer, or was talking with a police officer. At this point, he's sitting at the table. And the police officer is standing there. Basically, if more news comes in, he's there to provide it immediately. But also, he's there. Like his duty right now is to be available to your father in case your father needs to say anything or wants to say anything, or like he's basically standing vigil over your father. And he the police officer sees you walk into the kitchen, and we kind of pan over to your father. The two things that go through my mind would be, one would be your father just breaking down and crying in a way that you've never seen. The other, this like deeply broken moment that would probably be the last time you ever see that. The alternative being that he has already started to wrap himself up in anger and responds in a way that distances himself from how he's feeling right now. So I can roll for that, or you can choose.
He is not going to accept anybody's help, the cop or mine. When he sees me, the camera may not see it, but he starts asking me where I was, interrogating me unintentionally, like he's not thinking clearly. He doesn't realize that he's like transferring the trauma and the emotion into anger and blame towards me. But he starts to yell at me about that. Where were you? Why do you smell like that?
What the fuck were you doing?
Right. How come you weren't here? And you see him like stand up in anger while he's starting to yell, and the cop getting a little nervous, and then Caulan running upstairs away from the situation and being, maybe like punching at his door or something.
Okay.
Punching wall in the hallway, and then that's kind of the end of that moment.
Okay. In the spirit of keeping things feral, I'm going to pull up a roll with that.
Sure.
It's a slightly different take on things. I'm going to ask you to do a keep your cool roll. And
Okay.
it's not so much necessarily a question of, like going upstairs and punching something. It's totally a legitimate response to what's going on, but regardless of whether of the outcome of this roll.
Right.
The thing that I want to see here is if you're able to keep it tamped down until you get to your room, or until you get outside of sight of your
Or
father.
he and I have a fight right there. That makes sense.
Sure. So in this context, what are you afraid of?
I'm afraid of both of them blaming each other and having a fight right there. And in the worst case scenario, I'm afraid of them revealing their worst selves as werewolves, targeting each other.
Okay. So you're afraid of getting into an argument with your father, and where everybody can see just how bad you guys are.
That and where like physical violence might erupt because we're transferring that anger too far.
Sure. Okay. And let's see.
Dad is also a werewolf.
Yeah, it's a family power thing. So transfers.
Okay. You got a 7 on the die, but you also got a -1 cold, which puts you at a 6. So, your father is yelling at you, and where the fuck were you? And by the time, like, it gets in edgewise that your mom has died, and
Right.
he's giving you all of this shit about not having been home, about going off and doing stupid teen things, and where the fuck were you, and why do you smell like weed, and just giving you no quarter at all. And you get up to, like, just remove yourself from the situation, because you know that both you and he are volatile. And
Yeah.
he literally grabs your wrist and, don't fucking turn away from me.
Okay. Can I lash out?
Yeah.
Also, I lost a roll, so I should
Mark
roll an
experience.
experience.
Yep.
Marking experience. Yeah. If I succeed, I want to throw the chair,
Okay.
kind of, sort of like throw the chair where it looks like I'm throwing it at him, but just break against the wall behind him, just stupid hard.
Sure. Okay, you have a +2 on volatile.
Sure.
So you got an 11, which means that you are in control of that situation.
All right. So the chair I was sitting in was like a wooden kitchen dining room type chair,
Mm-hmm.
and like, or not necessarily sitting, it's standing next to,
Mm-hmm.
and the cops are not close enough to intervene in this one moment, right? When he grabs my wrist, you can see his eyes tinting and like the feralness of it coming
Sure.
out a little bit, and you can see that like his grip is straining on my arm as both of us are like flexed for a moment.
Uh-huh.
And I just picked the chair up and with a resounding "fuck you" and like throw it where he easily just kind of like turns his head and is not in the path, but it's thrown with enough force that either I'm incredibly strong for my age, or I might have low level, like extra strength somehow. That like moment of hinting that that's a thing,
Sure.
and it breaks. It hits the like the oven microwave section, and like just breaks apart, and you see that there's a crack in the microwave from it, and for just a moment you see the flash of like wolfness in his eyes before he like turns around and yanks his arm back and starts walking off.
Sure. And one of the things about getting 10 or above in that scenario is that the person that you have lashed out at, they choke up before they can react. So, like, as you pull away, he's just kind of left stuttering. And I'll extend that to the police officers, because,
Sure.
like, if the engagement was going to continue, they would have gotten in on that. But the teenage son who's just lost his mother, yeah, he threw a chair, but he's leaving the room. So.
And they, I think in that moment, what you really see is the power struggle between two werewolves for dominance over who's at fault,
Mm-hmm.
and declaration that I may not be able to beat you, but I'm my own. You are no longer dominant over me, kind of feel that vibe.
Sure.
I think, and you can, I think that it would be really difficult for my character, once he's alone, to avoid falling into like the dark itself
Mhm.
in this moment.
Oh,
I think he would,
there's a tree line in your backyard, so
right. I was thinking maybe like it shows him like hitting the wall once he gets up there, and then like looking and seeing the woods, and his eyes turning all fucking werewolfy, and then just like him opening the window and jumping out. And maybe since this is like the second episode, it wouldn't show the transformation, but that's totally where I'm thinking. Is he like wolfs out and fucks off that day, hopefully not killing anybody.
sure. I am game for that. So this then brings us to a question, like composing this as a television show that I want the entire group to have a say on. Because we talked about like a time jump being appropriate. It would be cinematically a pretty good jump to go from we see Caulan enter the house, where things are decent, have this eruption, and then the next shot is a year later. Caulan is in a crappy part of town, and everybody's had a time jump, and we re-enter and like reestablish where everybody is a year after we last saw them. So that's one option on the table. The other option is that we go ahead and roll through with the funeral.
I like skipping ahead, but we can do funeral stuff either way. Sounds good. I had a fun little thing for like the time lapse. If they didn't get kicked out of that house, of like the time lapse showing centering on the house, like the little whatever you call it, montage centering on the house, where like the yard starts not being taken care of and like being all fucked up, and like showing the inside of the house is like shit just gets messy and dirty with like dishes everywhere. Like there's it showing the decline. And
Are there just holes in the drywall like everywhere?
right, because these two fucking angry werewolves live here, and they're pissed at each other all the time, and like that type of stuff. But I also really like the idea that you just said of they're not even in that house anymore. They've moved to some shitty part of town, and we don't even know why, and that gets explained later. Like that's cool too.
Yeah. So, Linda, how much of that did you hear? You're muted.
Uh-huh.
So mute.
Okay, now you got sound.
Yeah, my computer decided to play some games with me earlier, and like everybody froze, and then y'all disappeared.
Oh.
And then I started hearing you again, and you reappeared. And I was like, so.
Yeah.
But that part I caught most of it. I had an idea for the funeral though that I thought would be entertaining for my character.
Okay.
Which because she's so much more awkward than everybody else, which is impressive considering we're in teenage drama. But funerals, I had this thought of since his mom was somebody that people knew, and that a lot of the students would go to the funeral, and Frankie would bump into Marty there again.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd be like, "Hey, how's it going?" And Frankie would just honestly say, "I don't know how I'm supposed to behave."
Sure.
And they have a little bonding moment where he says, "Yeah, nobody else really knows how to behave at these things either." And kind of puts his arm around her.
Sure.
And so there's this little bonding moment where Frankie starts to develop another relationship with someone.
Okay.
Finally.
there's a
Just a
way
thought.
thinking about it in terms of video shooting, and this is perhaps more structured than I would usually run a game, but since we are using a framework of a TV show, and I've gamed with all of you guys before, I'm a little more open than I would be normally to having just, well, here's the narrative, here's the narrative framework. Let's have fun inside of it. We could um, we could have the time jump and be juggling parallel scenes. So in one scene, we see you guys showing up for the first day of senior year, and then we jump to flashbacks of the funeral.
That would work.
Yeah.
Cool. I like it.
And if we're very, very lucky, the funeral sequence will end on a note that informs the weird things that have changed in your characters in the intervening year.
Yeah.
So it's kind of has the same risks of like time travel shenanigans. So it's risky, but I think that could be a fun way to thread the needle.
I like it.
Okay. Yeah, so I think the very next scene is going to, like we've seen Caulan jump out the window and start running off, and it's implied that he does the full transformation. And then the very next scene would be Caulan waking up in a house that is just crappy, and just visibly downgraded.
Yeah.
And is Caulan at this point the kind of person who's late to school?
Yeah. At this point, yeah. Like sometimes it depends on whether or not he's trying to follow and do his investigation of the kids, but but yeah, definitely he's more unpredictable right now, unstable.
Sure. So I assume that your room is just a mess, and there's like clothes and a pizza box and a beer can. And the alarm goes off multiple times, and you pick up the alarm and throw it, and like there's the smashed remains of another alarm, like 6 inches from where the one you just threw.
Sure.
Then it's a hard cut. We go and we jump to the high school, which the building itself hasn't changed. The shot of the students entering the high school could be the exact same shot as from the first episode, but the color toning has shifted a little bit.
Sure.
So we'll go ahead and open back up with homeroom, and with homeroom, does I'm under the impression that generally as you go through the high school experience, you more or less stay with the same homeroom, in a traditional kind of homeroom situation. Like that's not my experience, but from what I've read.
If I remember correctly, it's each year you have a new homeroom teacher.
Okay.
Because certain teachers do homeroom for certain grades, sort of thing.
Sure.
So it might be a new teacher, but it's probably going to be mostly still the same people.
Gotcha.
Although if it's a small enough town, it might still be the same teacher. They just, you're used to this room and this person, so it'll still be the same.
Sure. Well,
just be our teacher all through college.
The first shot of inside of the homeroom is going to be the new homeroom teacher, and where Mr. Oroskovich, I finally say his name, where Mr. Oroskovich was,
It's not needed.
yeah.
Now it's Mr. Bradovich.
What's that?
Now it's Mr. Bradovich.
Bradovich? No, no. The new teacher is Brad.
Brad. It just goes by Brad.
Just Brad.
Maybe he's younger than anyone.
Is he one of those teachers that wants us to think he's cool?
Yep.
He's like, call me Brad.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
He could be Mr. Bradley, or he could be Brad. What's up?
I like it.
Which one?
Mr. Bradley.
Mr. Bradley? Okay.
Mr. Bradley, but he says, call me Brad.
Yes. And nobody actually knows, like, it's this thing throughout the school that his actual first name is, like, the students, for some reason, it should be the kind of thing that you should be able to find out easily, but nobody fucking knows what his actual first name is. And where Mr. Roskovich was a very gentle and kind person, I'm picturing Mr. Bradley. You guys have kind of jumped around the idea that, like, the younger and trying to be kind of cool, but my angle on that is that the younger and kind of cool takes the form of, he smokes weed and drinks and pays about as much attention in class as the seniors do. And you know,
I had a teacher that was just like that, except for it was all painkillers. So he would like he let us watch, like our junior year in high school, let us like watch Clockwork Orange in class, like all sorts of crazy shit. Just like all sorts of, we'd ask him questions and he would just go on fucking story time the whole class period because he was loopy from his goddamn painkillers. So much fun.
nice. Yeah, actually, let's go ahead and let's take a bit from that. And I described Mr. Bradley as like getting high on the evenings and the weekends. Some of that is painkillers. He has a condition that which you know explains some of the behavior, but not all of it.
Yeah, totally.
So, and it's one of those things where this will probably be his second year teaching at Locksvale High. So you guys are familiar enough with him that because this is the first day of senior year, when you saw that was your homeroom teacher, you knew exactly what to expect.
Sure.
And so the first shot inside of the homeroom classes, you're not sure how. It's the first day, but there's like loose leaf paper just kind of on the desk, and things already look disheveled. And like there is a soda can. Like the students haven't arrived yet, and there's a soda can that had apparently been tossed at the trash can and hadn't quite made it. And so the camera is panning around Mr. Bradley's or panning around Brad's homeroom, and he's writing on the chalkboard his name, which, you know, just Mr. Bradley, then in smaller letters, you can call me Brad. Yeah. So describe for me, like, how you guys show up. Obviously, Caulan is going to be late. But a year has passed. Previously, Cordelia, you were the sort that would arrive just immediately on time. I kind of get the vibes of the being like not underachiever, not overachiever, but your grandma had drilled it into you enough that you were on point. And when in the first introduction, Andy and Frankie, you guys had met up outside the school, been chummy, talked your way through the halls, and arrived just a little bit before Cordelia. So what's changed? You know, what's changed in the way you guys look, in the way you guys behave? And this can be as subtle or as radical as you want. You have, I think, not a full year, but like almost. We were just before we were in November of junior year, so fall of senior year. More than half a year. So there's enough time for you guys to have undergone changes. So the ball is in your guys' court. Reintroduce each other and our audience to post time jump characters. And actually, if you guys want, we can take a 5 to 10 minute break to contemplate it, if nobody's feeling immediately inspired. I know that the time jump was kind of thrust on everybody.
Yeah.
So actually, let's go ahead and take a 5 minute break. I will pause the recording.
Cool.
All right. You know, one of the reasons why this is a little tricky is that in most other formats, what follows would be kind of edited and things would be woven together with knowledge of what's important and what's not. But this being role playing, it's very much just throw things and figure it out like as you go along. So while we are nominally emulating the feel of a TV show, we will never quite capture it. So just setting expectations there. So yeah, when we before we took the break, I had just been describing how Mr. Bradley was writing on the board, and somehow, even though it's the first day of senior year, the room already looks a little bit of a mess. Like sometime between when the janitors did their last run and when the students arrived, Brad or Mr. Bradley had already like settled it in, so to speak. And he has already like, you know, those old TVs with the VCRs that are on like rolling stands. He has commandeered one of those for the very fucking first day, right? And I'm trying to think what would be the best movie for him to be like. He's gonna stop it to actually have to. Actually, maybe fucking not. Like, you guys know him. He knows you.
It should be a vampire movie.
That or the Big Lebowski.
I haven't seen that.
And he'll be excited because there's like an element of like business strategy in there. There's something, but he's like, yeah, in the negotiations, he'll have an idea of why it's educational, that it's not.
I don't know. I need something with a fade to black. We assume there's a sex scene there, sort of thing.
Or or we could go with vampire with the with Interview with the Vampire, and he's doing it because it's a period piece, so there's educational historical background.
Right. And the chalkboard next to it, and it's gonna be playing when you guys arrive. And
It's already on.
like you guys have missed like the first 30 minutes. And in like underneath, like the name Mr. Bradley, but you can call me Brad, and then in even larger letters, fuck Twilight.
I like it.
So this is the scene into which you guys will be shuffling. So the main part of the break is kind of you guys getting an idea of how you want your characters to have changed from your introductions in junior year. So do we have anybody that is suddenly an early arriver?
Yeah. Well, Cordelia is probably not going to always be early, but today she's one of the first people there.
Okay. So
and
describe.
She's gonna sit in her normal spot.
What was that?
I said she's gonna sit in her normal spot.
Okay. So describe for us what Cordelia looks like at the beginning of her senior year.
Well, she is, I would say she looks like she's kind of growing into that like grown-up goth look. Like she does her makeup a little bit better, and she's not quite as like her hair is a little bit lighter.
Mm-hmm.
She's not really like coloring it dark. I'm gonna say her boobs got a little bit bigger because she's got a little bit older.
Sure.
And so maybe in general she's a little bit hotter. Also, I think that going with like a more natural look also is like, I think that she'll be a little bit prettier. And yeah, just kind of same general style, but like a little bit more put together, a little bit more adult.
Okay. So, oh God, I had a question about that. So it kind of sounds like she's more understated.
Yeah. I just think that she's like, yeah, I mean, understated would be probably a good word. She's just not trying. Well, she wasn't really trying that. Like, I think that before she was kind of like trying to give off a little bit of like a badass vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she's a little bit more comfortable with it now that she doesn't feel like she needs to like project that image. Like,
okay.
So I think she's kind of toned it down just a little bit and isn't as worried about like, making sure everyone knows that she's a badass.
Sure. So where last year she might have shown up in a t-shirt with a giant pentacle with moon symbols on the side and a leather jacket and some talismanic rings. Now she
Right.
just kind of looks like a slightly gothy young woman.
Yeah.
Okay. And with more confidence.
Right. The other thing too that I wanted to point out about her is that, like I said, she gets there early and she sits in her normal spot, and she's been like watching the door, like a little bit more obviously.
Uh-huh.
And she's still kind of behind Caulan's seat, or she's still in that same spot.
Mm-hmm.
And like you can tell that she's like waiting for him to show up.
Okay.
And in my head, somebody comes in like and walks to maybe sit in that seat,
Uh-huh.
and just the look that she gives them with their eyes, they just turn and like walk the other direction.
Uh-huh.
Like, don't fuck with her.
Sure. And oh, actually, unless you have any objections to it, I will say that, with homeroom, you mostly know each other pretty well. You've been in the same, largely been in the same homeroom. The person that walks in and who was rather unfamiliar with it enough that you like give daggers is actually a new kid.
Yeah.
So somebody give me a name for
James.
what?
James.
James.
That's James Craig. Because you just got dumped up.
Don't know that.
Okay, yeah. So James is a fairly average height with short cut blonde hair. He's got the kind of build that it looks like he works out, but he's not like a pro athlete. If anything, as you like glance him over and kind of get a feel for him, he seems almost radically nondescript.
Okay.
But so he gets the, like, as a person who is not quite sure of his place in the world and is trying to figure out what that place is, he quickly comes to the conclusion it's not that seat.
Yeah, right.
He's in that mode where he's looking to pick up on social cues, and this one was obvious. So he shuffles off to another seat. The other thing that I'll throw in there with him is that he's wearing a Buffy the Vampire Slayer t-shirt.
I like it.
So he's going retro.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah. So let's see. Okay, yeah. So we see that that Cordelia is kind of watching intensely or with focus to save Caulan a seat. Okay. My original plan was to kind of do quick flashbacks for each character as we go, but I want to get a little bit more information before we do the flashback for you on that one. Okay, who's next? I assume Caulan is late, so Andy and Frankie. How do you guys arrive?
This point is probably gonna, if we live, depending on where we live, I'm thinking maybe Andy actually has started picking Frankie up for school rather than, waiting to, having the whole, she'll show, see where the tag-along takes place, just solve the problem and just pick her up. So we ride into school together. Makes it easier to do the whole follow around thing. And there's not quite as much of the remora following along behind as sometimes walking next to Andy instead of behind Andy. So it's more like there's almost some equality happening there, but not entirely.
Frankie has started to form a little bit more, and is more confident in being proactive about the social cues.
Occasionally, yes.
Okay. Well, after long enough time of studying social interactions in films, you have a little bit of a larger repertoire, and you've had a chance to like test some of them out. I'm actually, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that like there's kind of this iconic thing with some high schoolers. I mean, it's an iconic thing for nerds in general, but um, if Andy has picked up on the degree to which Frankie studies films for like socializing, that is
Yeah.
the perfect lead-in for you guys to have a repertoire of film quotes that you're able to shoot back and forth that almost would exist on like be almost codified to the point of that one episode of Star Trek where
know exactly which one you mean just by saying that. The fucking like battle, the one where they all have they can't interpret it with their machine because the language is all references to other shit from
right,
their history.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Every time someone says that one episode of Star Trek, that's what they mean.
Yes.
It's so funny.
Yeah. So
don't even have any clue which episode that is.
Yeah.
yeah.
Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yeah, yeah. I can't remember I really should be able to just roll off with the quotes, but it's incredibly iconic. But yeah, like you guys have had an entire another year of interactions, so I presume that Andy now knows some of the movies that you draw from, and you guys can just spitfire back and forth.
See, and this helps me segue to the idea that I had for something that happened during the past year between the two of us, which was we're like watching a movie and you see the couple kissing and then it does that fade to black thing. And Frankie turns to Andy and goes, "So what happens there? What are they doing?"
Oh no.
Okay, Andy, I'm getting the
Totally
a turn-on
clueless.
roll, just primed up for you.
And this is how Frankie learned about porn.
Probably, yeah.
Oh God. Okay. So Andy, how does Andy respond to this moment where the video has been paused and Frankie, this long-time friend, turns to you and asks, "What's this about? What are they doing? What's going on
And
here?"
it's not even like super curious. It's just sort of deadpan question.
Right. Oh. Let me pull up what's Andy gonna do. It's only so many reactions because Frankie's got 3 strings on Andy, so
Or actually, this could even have been the previous year. Before the funeral. Pre-funeral.
Let's have it be between. Yeah, this is post funeral.
Okay.
Andy's gonna be real caught off guard, but gonna try and like fumbling explain it because as much as Andy is like flirted, most of it has been kind of haphazard and unthinking before. So like actually consciously trying to put, any of that stuff together intentionally is
Honestly, how many people have ever been asked to explain that to someone? I mean, it's like, what?
right.
Sure.
So Andy's gonna be like, does Andy know about the interaction with Marty at the party?
I'm not sure. I mean, probably because I mean, I assume Andy would have asked at some point. So how did you like the party? Because
Yeah.
you know what level of experience Frankie has with that sort of thing, and Frankie would tell you, I got to teach Marty something. He said he liked my moves on the field, and I said I could teach them to him. And so yeah, there'd be like, I don't think that's what he meant. It's like, well, what else would he have meant?
Right.
It's like, I don't understand.
So Andy's gonna kind of try and use that as like a frame of reference. Like, remember when Marty got real confused by your reaction to? It's because he was going for what's going on in the movies.
Okay. What is Andy afraid of at this moment?
No, I don't understand. What's going on? I still don't understand what's going on there.
Andy's partly just being really awkward, like teenager, like doesn't know how to talk about this stuff. And partly they've been friends for a really long time, so Andy doesn't want to mess up their friendship.
Okay. So Andy is afraid of messing up the friendship.
Right.
Okay. Because I'm making this a keep your cool roll.
Definitely. Like, how do I stay calm and cool under this circumstance?
Okay. Let's see. Your cold is -1, so that takes it down to a 10, which you still got it. So on a 10 plus, you keep your cool and gain an insight. Ask the MC a question about the situation and take one forward.
I'm not sure what question to ask you.
Well, you could also ask Frankie.
Yes.
A question. And it could also be if you're like, you as a player know that Frankie is not quite natural.
Mm-hmm.
But to what degree Andy is aware of that could be addressed here. Like, this could be a scenario where like something about Frankie's nature becomes mutually understood.
I'm gonna like ask like what in particular like piqued the curiosity, like, because there's plenty of things that Frankie doesn't seem to understand about social interactions, but since Frankie was actively curious about this one and didn't just kind of muddle through it.
Ask what piqued the curiosity. Perfect thing to ask, because the answer is going to be, well, at the funeral, and you can hear the capital T and the capital F in the funeral when Frankie says it. I had this conversation with Marty where he asked how I was doing, and I told him I don't know how to act. And he said, none of us do. And he put his arm around me and he kissed me. And it was nice.
Well, that's good. Kisses should be nice.
But I don't know what happens in the movies after people kiss. What happens then?
Ah, okay. So that depends on the people involved and what they want. Normally the implication is that they have sex.
How do you have
the
sex?
Chicken Bow Wow thing, like, should happen in the background somewhere. During this moment. What happens after that? Just that noise. I don't understand.
You're like, well, there's lots of ways.
And
I have brochures. from the school counselor. I haven't really read them yet either.
If at any point either of you want to make this a turn someone on roll, I have my finger on the button.
I'm not sure we should take this relationship that direction.
I haven't rolled yet, so I'm just letting you know.
So will you introduce Frankie to porn at this point and go, well, there are videos, but you kind of got to be careful about which ones you choose to base your response to kisses off of, because some of them might be inappropriate if you haven't known each other long enough or done this sort of thing before. Because, you know, you don't want her watching the ones where somebody's being choked during sex right off the bat, thinking that's how it's supposed, that's part of sex. I thought choking people was how you kill them. That's different.
I think Frankie's going to, or not Frankie, Andy is going to, like, be like, you know what? Come over next weekend. I'll borrow mom's credit card. I'll make sure that we don't, like, do bad research off of the free bad. We'll look up the good stuff.
We'll look up the good stuff. We'll rent some Cinemax movies.
Right.
Oh no. Wait, you don't have to rent Cinemax anymore, I don't think. It's pretty softcore stuff there.
They're gonna be mistakes. Like,
hey, we'll watch Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Since
So
I just started watching that this past weekend, and I'm like, wow, there's a lot more sex in this than I thought there was gonna be. Cool.
Those
I can
first
just
couple
picture them like sitting there back and forth, going like, I don't think this is actually supposed to be how this works. Like kind of vaguely horrified, like.
That doesn't look like it feels that good.
Right.
Is she in pain?
Oh.
Hey.
No, I thought you weren't supposed to do this with your relatives.
So one of the things I'm pulling from this is that if the go-to for showing erotica is like Game of Thrones, and you're having this like shared, I don't think how it's done that way. Is Andy playing into this, or is Andy legitimately like, this is abstract knowledge for Andy?
This is like a little bit of both. A lot of it's abstract. But like Andy has somewhat cottoned on that whole thing with the I don't know how to act, that like there's a bit of modeling going on and doesn't want to like misdirect anything. So like not gonna pull up the like gay 101 stuff that they tentatively Googled when they were thinking about Logan.
Sure.
They're just kind of going to be like, well, this is what most people watch, right? So we're going to try and figure out the rest of it.
Oh, so you actually, Andy has the queer porn collection and is introducing Frankie to the vaguely heteronormative, like.
Right. Because Andy hasn't quite figured out their own sexuality, so they're like not entirely sure that they're, opposed to the straight part either. So they kind of want to figure this out too.
Right.
But
Okay. So the vibe that I'm getting from this is since at this point, neither of you have opted for the turn someone on roll. This is a platonic bonding experience that you guys have.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of how we start equalizing, like,
Sure. And is it
this is how Frankie figures out that Andy does not have it all figured out.
Ah, yes. Okay. And so since time has passed that we're kind of filling in, I'm kind of imagining, and again, this is me like putting things on the table that you guys can say yes or no to.
Mhm.
I know that one of the dynamics that sometimes pops up would be along the lines of like once that watershed has broken, then yeah, you guys like meet up to watch, but then also there is at least some amount of downtime in between hanging out where you are compiling links and or things that you send to each other. And the
We're
hangout
basically supplying each other with porn links now. Yeah.
almost to the point like that
Oh, yeah.
at some point there could even be a scene where you guys are sitting down to like legitimately do study break, and there's porn playing in the background, and it's just so blasé that you're like talking about math.
Yeah. I love it.
Okay.
That's perfect.
So as Andy gives Frankie a ride to school, we see this increased equality between the two of them. And Frankie is starting to get more comfortable with socializing, and specifically realizing the degree to which other people don't have it figured out either.
And I have the idea that at some point in a flashback you might also see Frankie and Marty talking again, having a conversation somewhere. He's
Sure.
like got his hand on her lower back. He's doing that hand on the lower back thing.
Sure. Well, we'll come back to that. So that's how Frankie has developed, and that's a little bit of how Andy and Frankie have developed together. But how has Andy changed in the intervening year?
Andy, like, other than like the dynamic with Frankie kind of evening out, has got a little bit more just doesn't seem as grounded when they're at school. Like there hasn't been a whole lot of change.
You haven't gone full glam rock?
No, actually, there's kind of been a drift the other way. Like they've been starting to kind of like gear up for that last November. Like, you know, showed up to the party in the kilt and the eyeliner and everything. And they'll still sometimes do the eyeliner and the nails. But they're more likely to come in with like almost like soft punk, like they've got or messy artists, like grass stained on the knees of jeans, and a little bit more disheveled, and like talking to Frankie or doing things for music class, or like the times when they seem most like present, real in the world. Otherwise they've become kind of just distant. They like that whole interacted with the freshmen and kind of took them under the wing and everything. Like they haven't really volunteered those sorts of interactions since then. They've been a little bit more, not exactly cold, but absent, checked out, at least at school. And, you know, if anybody's seen them outside of school, they might notice that that's different when they're out, like, in the woods or something. If they've ever spotted them, like, they seem a little bit more real when they're outside. But anytime they're in town, they're just going through the motions.
So the woods have kind of become almost not intoxicating, but I'm kind of imagining that when I worked for the library, there was this family that had a very distinctive scent to them. It was very nice. You could tell that like they heated their house with wood burning stoves and things like that, and like used specific kinds of herbs and things like that that were very heavy-handed, but nice. I'm kind of imagining that Andy, to anybody that pays attention, Andy kind of has the scent of the woods.
Yeah.
Cool.
Almost even like if we went further, you could go so far as to say that like some of the oils from the plants in the woods are able to be extracted into oil, like into oil that you can like mix with aftershave or with, you know, like deodorant and things like that.
Sure, but not like super strong. He's not walking around with Axe.
Sure.
There's actually a company, I have a number of their products where the scent is called Naked in the Woods. And I can tell you from my experience at Camp Gaia, the pagan camp near Leavenworth, or near, not Leavenworth, starts with an L. Anyway, it's actually a very accurate scent to hanging out at a pagan camp in the woods. So
yeah. Well,
yeah.
And also it doesn't, like the way I'm picturing it isn't so much like the scent is meant to advertise to other people. It's more like there would be a dab on you so that you can smell it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. And the way I'm picturing it, after you pick up Frankie, and we've established that there's more equality between the two of you. Like, is Frankie now kind of the one of? It's often been my experience that like the friendships that you have before you start to kind of withdraw have a better chance of surviving that withdrawing experience than the friendships you make in the middle of withdrawing. So like Frankie is Frankie kind of not an anchor, but like filling that lasting bond role?
Yeah.
Well, and Frankie also doesn't find the woods to be bizarre and uncomfortable.
Right. So like the place where Andy is progressively the most comfortable is also somewhere where Frankie is willing to hang out.
When nowhere is comfortable, everywhere is fine.
I mean, you know, other people think the trees are weird and abnormal, but Frankie's like, I don't understand. Isn't this how all trees are? Like, I mean, I know they look different in the movies, but that's movies. That's not real. This is real. So obviously this is how real trees are, and they make them look different for movies.
Frankie is definitely growing up.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, playing into the, like, Andy's a little bit checked out. Andy's like, well, this is how they are now.
Okay.
Okay,
No
so
problem.
I'm kind of picturing the cinematically the way this has played out is that Frankie hops into Andy's car, and I presume it's actually Andy's car at this point. Um, and you guys are driving along and having kind of like morning chit chat. And we go to this flashback of the two of you having the discussion about media depiction of sexuality and the realization that you guys like that Andy doesn't have it figured out that much more than you that do necessarily, Frankie. And then we also shortly after like seeing kind of like a montage showing the progression of you guys sharing videos and having this extend like literally doing the math homework with the porn in the
Asking,
background.
you know, see the occasional, what the heck is that? Yeah. It's like, oh, that one looks like it would be fun.
And Frankie's mom has no idea what to do with this.
Yeah. No clue.
So then the next kind of like shot in the montage is the two of you hanging out in the woods, and they're better lit, but there's still that like the fog machine is still rolling even during the day.
Okay, like nonstop.
And everything in the visual cues is saying that this place is spooky, and frightening and damp and unnatural, and you guys are just having, you know, a regular
You get that one
conversation.
raven sitting there staring at you creepily.
Right. And as you guys walk by, the camera pans across some of those tree stumps that I had mentioned in the first episode. And yeah, it's the most natural place, and we actually see Andy kind of like livening up a little bit in this environment. And then we cut back to school. I assume that you two arrive more or less on time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And with that, we go to when the bell rings to indicate that the school has started. Mr. Bradley hands a stack of papers that are, you know, like not even all the right way, and has them passed around, and just doesn't say anything to the class. Once the bell has rung, he actually turns up the volume on Interview with a Vampire, and just lets you guys have, it's first, this is your first day of high school. You know what to do. So he is quite content to let you be seniors and figure out your own processes. The handout has the most basic information that you need for the day. The things that he's supposed to say, he just like took the sheet that had his instructions on it and just made 20 photocopies of it.
Everybody gets this.
So it has, you know, the school menu, like the lunch menu, and all of those things. And it has like sports, like club information. You know, sports are already looking at recruiting students for the upcoming season, and like all that goes on. How late exactly is Caulan?
He's probably like 20 minutes late, and I imagine that like you see him handing out the papers and like turning it on and stuff, and then it cuts to Colin pouring himself a bowl of cereal and like reaching into the refrigerator, like headphones in, blaring music, and like the fucking milk thing is empty and it's still in the fridge, and he just like pulls it out, sees that it's empty, he's like, fucking asshole, puts it right back where it was, shuts the door, like pours the cereal back in the box, and fucking puts leaves like the bowl out, and it's just like, hey, Dad, you going to work today? Didn't think so, and like just walks out, and like cuts back to like them looking at the paper and the fucking movie's still going on, and like cuts back to him with him driving his shitty car, still listening to the music blaring, and like totally zoning out and not paying attention to getting anywhere quickly or anything like that. Like, and you see him walk in, like the movie is on to another scene a little bit later in the thing when he finally parks.
You said you're like 20 minutes late, right?
Yeah.
Which would actually be about the length of homeroom itself.
Perfect. So he walks in right as homework room is done, and it's like, hey, Mr. Brad. Oh, all right, next room. Like, grabs the handout from him and like walks out.
So I want to interject that throughout that the camera jumping back and forth, one of the last cuts that we see before Caulan arrives is Cordelia sitting in her normal spot, having saved the seat for Caulan and waiting apprehensively the entire time. And the audience isn't quite sure what's going on at that point. But then when like the look of frustration on Cordelia's face that homeroom is continuing and this person hasn't arrived yet starts to like sink in that, oh, Caulan is not there yet, and just arrives literally as homeroom ends. Cordelia, take it from there. You've been waiting for 20 fucking minutes for this asshole's son.
So when Caulan arrives, have we already started dismissing, or we're all still sitting in our seats?
I assume you're still sitting in your seats. The bell rings and I arrive, so people will start to want to like get up and move. But
nobody can get out the door because he's standing in it.
Right, and if you need me to rewind it so he walks in like 5 seconds before the bell rings, that's cool too.
So I'm gonna say that yeah, so if Caulan shows up right when the bell rings, Cordelia is gonna roll her eyes and she's obviously gonna be annoyed. And then I'm imagining, so like if Caulan comes in as the bell rings and then everyone else starts getting up and leaving, Cordelia's gonna start walking out of class, and I
don't know. I think that it's happened enough that like, do you want to know if you know the secret?
No.
Okay.
No, my thought was just as you're leaving and like I'm behind Caulan, noticing that he's got like a twig in his hair and just being like,
excellent.
Late night, huh? And just like picking the twig out of his hair and just like walking away. Just obviously like annoyed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Nice. Okay. And unless anybody has anything else to add, that sounds like a pretty good like scene cut moment.
Yeah.
The $1 million question there was going to be how Cordelia and Caulan still related to each other, and it sounds like there is some exasperated familiarity. But you guys are definitely still on speaking terms. or rather,
Yeah.
on terms that you don't have to speak.
Right.
Or there's unspoken understandings.
Yeah.
I feel like, well, we haven't really like done a flashback yet for Cordelia right after it happened, right?
No, we have not.
Okay.
And that is open and on the table, either today or next sessions. What are you feeling right now? What?
I had something in mind, but it doesn't matter to me when we do it. It's not that big of a.
Okay, well, let's run it. I've got one last thing that I want to get into today's session, but it should be relatively short. So let's do it. Where is Cordelia when the flashback arrives on her?
So I'm thinking that the flashback is gonna be Cordelia like in that same homeroom classroom, and obviously she heard about what happened to Caulan's mom because everyone's heard about what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he missed school for at least a few days probably afterwards. Yep. So I'm imagining her like sitting in her seat and she's got the locket in her hands and she keeps like opening it and looking at it and kind of like fiddling with it and waiting for him to show up. And so in my mind in this flashback, it's like multiple days are going by that she's kind of sitting there like waiting for him to show up, like thinking about what she's going to say to him. And then in my head, when he finally does come back to class, he's like already probably like super angry, right?
And because those two events happened at the same time,
yeah,
he's less likely to, not think about it much.
Right, he's not at all like having like
to like not want to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like in my like the way that I'm seeing it is that she's thinking about like what happened and like that they need to have a conversation about it and that she wants to like talk to him about it and give the locket back because obviously like it's his mom's and she feels like he should have it back and then I feel like when he finally shows up, it's obvious that there's like not gonna be any conversation and she just like puts it back in her pocket and just like
sure.
And then that's just it.
So a couple of things that I'm getting from that. One is that there's actually this very strong bit of narrative mirroring or parallel narrative where we just saw you in this new scene sitting there and explicitly waiting for Caulan to arrive. And then during the flashback, we basically have a parallel of that, where in the days following Cindy's death, you're sitting there with the locket, waiting for Caulan to come back.
Yeah.
And there is almost as much discussion about the locket in the flashback as there was about Caulan's late night.
Right.
Perhaps even less.
Right, exactly.
So what in the flashback is this very like it feels like an intensely high stakes event because of the circumstances and the trauma, and then 6 to 8 months later we see kind of a similar dynamic but with much lower stakes. And
right. At this point she's like was expecting it, like wasn't surprised, and it was just kind of like the way that things are.
Okay. Cool. So yeah, the camera goes into that flashback. We see the locket, and I think of particular importance is that shot where Cordelia realizes that this conversation that she's been having in her head isn't going to happen, and she just puts it in her pocket. That feels very important to me. And then the camera cuts. And I'm gonna throw one more scene in tonight, and then we're gonna call it good. We're not going in depth about what happened at the funeral in today's episode, but I do want to get one flashback in there about it. And it is going to be shortly after the funeral, like the ceremonial part of it, the ritualized part of it, right? You know, you're in the section where people are milling about, and the people that weren't able to talk to Caulan or his father before the funeral or before the actual event are now kind of like doing the procession. You know, and it's one of those things where Caulan is going to be having a lot of people by default. There's going to be just a lot of rapid fire people trying to like give their condolences and their sympathies to Caulan, and the exact circumstances under which that like how that plays out will vary. I'm picturing that for this particular one, for one reason or another, Caulan has left the building to get a breather, and has more or less escaped the throngs of people to get a little bit of privacy. And the funeral has gone poorly, right? Like we all know that something happened at the funeral.
Oh yeah.
We don't know what yet, but something happened at the funeral. As I'm kind of picturing that outside of the church where it's happening, there is a kind of half wall, old stone half wall, and as is ubiquitous, the tree line is, you know, not that far beyond it, and you can hear the river beyond that. And a fairly thin, clean-shaven man in a suit walks up. Even in the intense focus, like just trying to zone everything out, you know, it's hard to not be hyper vigilant and pick up the fact that somebody's walking up behind you. How strong are Caulan's senses at this point? Like, are you?
I specifically have heightened senses
Okay.
for my character, so there's a special ability for that.
Yeah. When you roll to gaze into the abyss, or when you use your animal instincts on a charged situation, you roll dark. On a 10+, you ask the MC 3 questions and take one forward. On a 7 through 9, you ask one question and take one forward.
So I just, you know, I obviously this isn't necessarily a heightened situation, but just in general, his senses are pretty damn good. So even if he's distracted, he's got better than average person senses.
Okay, let's go ahead and make it a roll. Your dark is -1.
Yep.
So, yeah, you're the way that's going to play out is your heightened senses will be. What's that?
Can you tell me what number total it is? I can't read.
Sure, sure. Your total is 3.
Okay,
Oh.
so very low. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
just checking.
Mark and experience.
Hey, I got the 5.
Sweet. You will be able to level up. The way this is going to play out is that your heightened senses, you're going to like be able to pick up all sorts of things about this guy. It's not, the failure isn't that you didn't smell him, right? And you didn't hear him. It's that you get a barrage of information about him that just doesn't make a lot of sense right now. There is a blend of the woods, and there are some smells that you don't recognize. And you can tell that his shoes are have been freshly polished, but the way that they put, like, you can tell that they're very old. You can tell that when he takes a step, the branches or the leaves don't quite break under him as much as you think that they should.
Sure.
So all of these just various details that you're in a different place. So no answers arise from this. Just
Sure.
shotgun of details. But you do recognize there's enough distinctiveness to it that it is Mr. Amati.
Okay.
Who by now enough details of the dinner party have emerged that you know he was there, and of course him being the eccentric philanthropist, rich guy of town. He probably contributed to some of the funeral expenses and knew your mom, at least in passing, if not well.
Yeah.
And so, how do you respond to him approaching you?
I'll be quiet and look at him. Like I'm not going to start the engagement.
Sure. Sure. And he's not going to belabor this too much, right? He's not going to sit down. He's not going to have a heart-to-heart with you. But as you look at him, I'm kind of picturing he's standing just a little bit behind you, so you have to turn to look at him.
Sure.
So he opens up a little card holder and pulls out a business card and hands it to you, and it has his name and his some of his contact information. And what he says to you is that he didn't know your mom that well, but she was always true to her word, and that was something that he really appreciated about her. If you ever need anything, just let me know. Just contact me. That's good for one favor. And with that, he puts a hat on and turns to leave. Oh, one other thing I would put in there. Preface all of that by him saying that he's really sorry about how that went, about how that turned out.
Okay.
Referring to the events of the funeral that have not yet been defined.
Sure.
So he's really sorry about how that played out. It really shouldn't have gone that way. But your mom was always true to her word. He really appreciated that about her. And if you ever need anything, here's his information. It's good for one favor. Turns to leave.
Are you doing this for me, or did you owe her something?
he
As he's walking away.
sure. He pauses, and kind of like does a half look to the side, and responds rather quizzically with, "Is there a difference?" And then continues.
Sure. And he'll put it in his, take out his janky wallet, put it in there.
Sure.
Put it back.
And does Caulan do anything immediately after that, or do we just kind of like the camera
Just
pans?
mutters under his breath, this fucking town.
Excellent. And with that, the camera pans, like it does kind of a turn around and sees people leaving the funeral home, and then pans out into the woods. And it does that shot where it kind of like slowly moves into the woods until things get dark and we fade to black. Then in the first episode, I mentioned the swelling of music of the indie, like the alt rock band of the week. So the different song, probably even different artist, but the music swells as the camera goes into the woods and fades to black.
Cool.
Okay. So that's game. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.
Okay, quick question. Do we take the experience stuff in order?
No, you can choose which one.
And once you choose, you like cross that off and you can't choose it again?
Exactly.
Interesting.
Is there something that you definitely are thinking about, or you want to give it some time?
Well, I was thinking about like, entering the next year since that happened like earlier.
Mhm.
Entering in the new semester with the extra and hot. Like he went through all this stuff and now he's got a little bit of that like dark bad boy hot. Or I could take like actual moves that would be helpful.
You could take something useful, or you could just be more hot.
Right. Like honestly, like dark would be way better for me than hot.
Yeah.
But like I feel like the show needs the character to be hotter than like a hot of one. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
I'm a little debating on this.
I'm on board with that. My personal recommendation would be to go with that first instinct of upping your hot, just because it totally makes sense thematically. But
Right.
you can spend some time on it.
Sure.
All right.